College football season is short. We just finished the last week of the regular season, rivalry week. Clemson defeated South Carolina. Louisville completely annihilated Kentucky, but Georgia Tech lost to Georgia. Florida State loses to Florida, which keeps them out of a bowl game. But the biggest news is late night Cal upset over SMU sends the ACC into a potential doomsday scenario. We're going to get into all of that in our ACC Power Rings, our final one of the regular season. Before we do that, don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you've been watching these all year and still haven't subscribed, it does help. So I'd appreciate it if you could give it a subscribe. And lastly, there's a still somewhat new function called hype. See if you have the option to hype the video. It helps even more than liking it does. So see if you can do that for me. I'd appreciate it. With that, let's go ahead and dive into the ACC Power Rankings. And at the bottom, these two teams played last week. Boston College had no ACC wins. They pick up only their second one of the year, their first ACC win. Syracuse loses 8 straight games after that Clemson loss. That is I think, probably easily the worst loss in the Dabo Swinney era. It's the worst loss that Clemson has had since the 2004 loss to Duke. That was a really bad Duke team back then. And it was coming on the heels of a Tommy Bowden Clemson team win over 11th ranked Miami. So you got to go back 21 years to find a loss that bad for Clemson. Really aged poorly for Clemson. But Syracuse, horrible season. Right after they won double-digit games last year in Fran Brown's year one, we knew this year would be a rebuild. Now we're going to see probably something in the middle, which is probably the reality for Syracuse and Fran Brown. We'll see if it's closer to 8 wins or closer to 6 wins and sort of where that program nets out. It's interesting. Just a few weeks ago, Fran Brown was probably a name programs were maybe considering as a great hire, but now next year, he's not on the hot seat, but next year's a big year for them. So Boston College above them, bad year overall, but at least they end with a win. I think next year's probably a critical year. Boston College is bad at everything. I mean, they're bad at football, they're bad at basketball, they're bad at baseball. I saw they lost to some school I'd hardly heard of in maybe Murray State or some other not Power 5 school women's basketball. They are just in bad shape as an athletic department. I don't know what the future holds for Boston College, but it's hard to be optimistic for them. Now, it's easy to be optimistic for some of these next teams. Virginia Tech in particular, they just got blown out by their rival. Virginia and their rival is now going to the ACC championship. So that's kind of dark times for them, but it's not, because you're looking ahead. You're looking and thinking, we got James Franklin. We're swiping all of these big recruits from Penn State who are decommitting and flipping to Virginia Tech, and you're excited about the future. You know, whether you get 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins, you're not going to make a bowl. So this is probably the least consequential. For the few times they lose to Virginia, this is a season where you probably care less than ever. I'm sure they would have loved to knock them out of the ACC championship, but I think that they should be excited about the future. I think James Franklin's a great hire for them. Now, conversely, North Carolina had a little momentum after beating Syracuse and Stanford, but then they entered a stretch where they played all the in-state ACC teams, lost to all of them. Just a disappointing way to end a year. It seemed like they were maybe figuring things out. They're certainly not as bad as they were at the start of the year, but I think even in year 2, Bill Belichick's on the hot seat. Stanford, middle of the night game against Notre Dame, got crushed. No surprise. They did make a hire, though. They got Tavita Pritchard from the Washington Commanders. He was previously their offensive coordinator, and he was the quarterback who preceded Andrew Luck. So he knew Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's the GM there. Makes the hire of a guy who he probably had a prior positive relationship with. Will be interesting to see if they could find some footing there as a result. Florida State, they could not stop the run. They're really bad defensively. Jaden Baugh of Florida ran for 266 and he didn't have any like crazy explosive 70-yard runs. So as long as from 22 yards, they still had 266 on the ground. Bad look for Florida State for sure. They finished 5-7, no bowl for them. Now, above them, I have Wake Forest. I had them 6th last week, so I was really high on them. And this is the first spot where I gotta just eat it and say I was wrong. I thought they'd go to Durham and win. I thought Duke wasn't that good. I thought Wake Forest was really doing something special, but Wake's defense, which has been fine, torched for 49 points, 49-32 loss to Duke. I thought I thought Wake Forest could maybe hit 9 wins, but that's not going to be the case. Disappointing finish for Wake Forest, but still 8-4, 4-4 you got to remember at the beginning of the year, I had them with Stanford and Cal as the 3 teams, and Syracuse as the 4 teams at the very bottom of this conference. who could be really, really bad. 8-4 for Wake Forest is a successful season. They'll go to a bowl game. It'll be interesting to see which one. They're a smaller fan base, so they could be passed over by a 7-win Clemson. And some of these other 7-win teams like an NC State who had fewer wins but a bigger fan base. So it'll be interesting to see where some of these non-playoff bowls where the bids go to. It used to be a little bit more clear which was the better bowl. I'll try to break that down in a future video. Now they're a little bit more even and mixed up. The pinstripe's probably a little bit better than the Fenway, but they're basically the same. And that's kind of the case for a lot of these. I'll break it down in a separate video, but disappointing finish, but good year for Wake. I have them at 11. NC State, one fewer win, but I like their finish. They beat Georgia Tech, beat Florida State, beat North Carolina, finished the year with 3 out of 4 victories. The other one was a pretty bad loss to Miami. At a certain point, I was thinking Dave Doran was going to get fired. Now I think he's fine unless he just wants to retire. I don't know what their upside is with Doran and with the amount of money they need to dedicate to a really strong basketball program with Will Wade. So I don't know that you fire him if you're not going to give the next coach more resources to win big. So there's the bottom 8 there. Let's look at the top 9. So at number 9, I have the ACC championship bound Duke Blue Devils. They're 7-5. Now they're 6-2 in conference. They won some sort of weird tiebreakers with, common opponents and record of ACC schedule opponents, all of that. But look, I may not think they're that good. They're going to the ACC championship game. So first off, kudos to them for winning the games they need to win. I thought it was going to be tough against Wake Forest, but Darian Mensah was great again. That was a big-time move for them to go in the portal and get him. They didn't, quote, need a quarterback, but they didn't settle for decent. And that's a note for a lot of these teams, including, and maybe most notably, Coach Sweeney and Clemson. You may not have a hole, but you may have the opportunity to upgrade. That's what Duke did. Brought in a great quarterback, and it's paid huge dividends for them. Jonathan Brewer, the offensive coordinator, is really interesting. Maybe Clemson takes a look at him, putting up 49 on a decent Wake Forest squad. They torched Clemson, so maybe it hits a little close to home for Coach Sweeney. I think that's an interesting name. We'll see if Diaz and Duke are able to retain him, as there's going to be a lot of OC openings that are theoretically bigger jobs than Duke. But hey, congrats to them. If they win the ACC, though, they're probably not going to the playoff. There are the top 5 highest ranked conference champions get an automatic bid into one of the top 12 spots, not necessarily 1 through 5. There's no guarantee that Duke is one of the 5 highest rated conference champions. If James Madison wins the Sun Belt, they should be, probably will be, and absolutely deserve to be ranked above Duke. And then the winner of North Texas versus Tulane for the AAC championship very likely will be, should be, and absolutely deserves to be ranked above Duke. So if Duke wins this, pending a James Madison loss to bail them out, I think the ACC would be completely left out of the playoff. We'll talk a little bit about Miami and their chances in a bit, but bad scenario was really bad for the ACC that SMU lost and kind of set up this potential scenario. Then we look at the teams above them. Louisville, great finish, right? Destroy Kentucky. I mean, it was not competitive, 41-zip. They outgained the Wildcats 440 to 140. They had two different 100-yard rushers, and Isaac Brown didn't even play. Louisville just took it to them. I think Kentucky, kind of like NC State, but even to a far greater extreme, Kentucky's putting their money in basketball. So I don't know what you expect from Mark Stoops. If they can't buy the players, they can't pay the players, they don't have the history, they don't have a football culture. I don't know what you expect from Kentucky. So Mark Stoops is going to stay. No news or rumblings about him getting fired, and I don't think they should. If you have $20.5 million, you can put it in basketball. Maybe that makes sense. But then you can't. I don't think you should just waste money cycling through coaches for no reason if you're not going to give them the resources to win in football. So Louisville, by far the best football program in that state right now. Above them is Cal. Cal at 7. You could argue they should be 5. I think you could even maybe argue them up to 4. You could also have them probably as low as maybe 12, 11 probably. Cal's a wild card. Don't know where to put them. But JKS and wide receiver Jacob DeJesus just shredded SMU. 38 points, knocked him out of the conference championship. JKS threw for 330 with 4 touchdowns and no picks. DeJesus had 12 receptions for 97 yards. They were up 17. They were SMU was answering, but Cal answered back every time until the very end where SMU rattled off 21 in a row, took a lead finally. But then Cal went down and responded with what would end up being the game-winning touchdown. SMU shot back with very little time, got all the way into field goal range, but then they had a few errors, had a big penalty on a snap infraction where it was basically a false start. The center started to snap it, then stopped, and then snapped it. It was the correct call, scooted them back a little bit. They had to try a field goal that was over 50 yards, sailed wide. They lose. They fall out of the championship game, which puts Duke in it. It's weird because Cal had just fired Coach Wilcox. And, maybe after all those years where it seems like the ceiling is 7 wins there with Coach Wilcox, maybe that's fine. But I don't know how much higher that ceiling is going to be with a different coach. I think, the stadium was empty. No, seems like they have very little fan following. They have to travel across the country to play in the ACC. They were almost a pity take by the ACC because the Big 12 didn't want them and the Big 10 didn't want them. And so they had to basically give up part of their TV revenue to get in with a real conference. I don't know what the expectations there are, but with the coaching change, maybe you see JKS and Jacob DeJesus enter the portal. Both would be great fits for Clemson. Both devout Christians. Coach Sweeney, come on, bring some Christians over to Clemson. Guys who could play. Guys, you're going to have a pretty big spot open at slot receiver with Antonio Williams leaving. You're going to have a pretty big spot open at quarterback. I don't know that you're going to be doing any better than these two if Clemson can muster the money and bring them in, but would be unbelievable ads for the Tigers. So above Cal, I have Clemson again, that you could swap those. I think this is kind of a section 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, really interchangeable here. But Clemson 7-5, 4-4, not good, but way better than we might have thought not too long ago. They finished the season probably 3 to 4 wins behind what you thought. Most people would have had Clemson at 10 or 11 wins. They get 7, but they do win the Palmetto Bowl. Defense was dominant, all but 2 drives, or really all but 2 plays. Clemson's defense looked great, except what Coach Sweeney, and I agree, would call probably 2 of the worst defensive plays he's ever seen. I agree. One was a 53-yard touchdown pass where Brandon Strozer got beat. I guess that happens sometimes, maybe a little bit too much in this case, but Strozer gets beat. Ricardo Jones is not back. He's just out of position, turns it into a touchdown. 2 guys messing up, one on execution, one, I guess both on execution, but the secondary not good there. And then the other one, more baffling. It's a 20-yard pass, or the pass is 20 yards downfield on kind of to the outside. And Corian Gibson seems like he's there to either knock it away, intercept it, or at least make a tackle. And he just runs right by the play. But Jaden Lucas is standing right there, makes no play on the ball, but he's standing like 6 inches from the guy. He just freezes, doesn't make the tackle. Vandravius Jacobs, who caught the ball, he's bent over, kind of getting his footing, realizes, is no one going to tackle me? And then he just takes off and runs another 54 yards to make what at worst should have been a 20-yard catch into a 74-yard touchdown. That made things dicey. But Clemson's defense buckled down beyond those 2 plays. The Gamecocks couldn't run the ball at all. They had 41 rushing yards. Sammy Brown and Wade Woodaz were great in slowing down Lenore Sellers. He really didn't get much going on the ground, which was interesting. I think South Carolina had to get him going on the ground if they were going to win. They didn't do that. Klubnik, I didn't think was very good. He wasn't, maybe he was a little bit better than Sellers, but not the best game. He had 268 yards, no passing touchdowns, 1 interception. He on one sequence, he had a wide open receiver and he overthrew him to miss him. And then on the very next play, the other side of the end zone, he had another open receiver and he underthrew him, which led to his interception. But after that, he settled in, was decent. A few other errors and misses, but none of them as bad as the pick 6 from Sellers that ended up costing the Gamecocks the game. Sammy Brown was great. Avion Terrell forced another fumble. Avion Terrell was great. TJ Parker had 3 sacks. He had 2 all season. He had 3 in this one. So that was great. Ricardo Jones had the aforementioned mess up on that long touchdown, but he also had 2 picks, including the pick 6. So a hero in the game to some extent. Nolan Hooser, 2 field goals, which even though it was 28-14 final, The difference was largely the 2 field goals. They were up 6 before a pick 6 and then a 2-point conversion. Made it look like a 2-touchdown game, but it was really field goals. They were the difference right there until the final drive. So Hoosier was great. So Clemson finishes the year on a win streak, 4 in a row. Now, a lot of that is because South Carolina's not good. Furman's not good. Louisville played horrible. Florida State played a bad game. So I think in the best case optimistic view, Clemson finishes strong, has a little momentum, feeling good, at least having some joy and hope and fun there at the end of the year. And it's not all miserable. Seniors go out positively, but it's also pretty obvious this team's not that good. Coach Sweeney needs to make major changes. Surely he's not duped by these wins against bad teams where Clemson does not look good. And changes are made and they make real improvements, not just very bad luck against Duke to very good luck against Louisville. That's sort of what we've had so far to finish well. Now we need real meaningful changes, possibly major talent infusion from the transfer portal, possible changes to the coaching staff. And if that happens, we'll have some great videos on that to break it down. I think Jonathan Brewer at offensive coordinator is an interesting option. If Garrett Riley maybe goes to North Texas, I think that would make sense for him as a head coach. One final note on Clemson before we move on. Interesting. Quarterback Cade Klubnik finishes 2-1 against the Gamecocks in his career. Good for his legacy. He also finishes with no touchdown passes and 3 picks in those 3 games. Kind of a weird stat line there. The wins are all that count, but I think this win here aided. Really, both of the wins were heavily defensive-oriented wins. So defense really helping his legacy a lot in that case. Number 5, we go to SMU, Southern Methodist. I don't know what to say aside from they blew it. The defense completely abandoned them. The ACC has been weird this year. SMU beat Miami, but SMU lost to Cal. Cal beat SMU, beat Louisville, but they lost to Stanford. Miami beat Notre Dame, but Miami lost to Louisville, right? Who lost to Cal. So it's very circular. A lot of these teams, the separation in these power rankings, once you get past Florida State, a lot of these teams are pretty close. There's kind of and look, even 11-12, Florida State blew out Wake Forest, and I think Wake Forest is clearly above them, several wins. What is that? 3 wins more. So even there, a lot of this is toss-up, and that makes it fun, but also hard to rank. Georgia Tech, I could have them higher. I really could. I also could have them way lower because I don't know that I would pick Georgia Tech to beat Clemson if they played again. Georgia Tech actually, by win expectancy, would have not been expected to win by the stats accumulated in Atlanta in the Clemson-Georgia Tech game. If they played a neutral site next week, I might lean Clemson. Georgia Tech's defense has looked bad up until this Georgia game. It's weird. They looked really bad against NC State and lost. They looked bad against BC, but barely won. And then they looked really, really bad against Pittsburgh and lost. So they lost 2 out of those 3. Then the defense looked good, but now the offense looked bad as they lost 3 out of 4, losing to Georgia. So a really bad finish for them. Great start. But who did they really beat all year? They beat 7-win Clemson. They beat 8-win Wake Forest. They really have no great wins. Colorado and Clemson were supposed to be their great wins. Neither turned out to be so good. And you saw a little bit of a reversion to the mean with Haynes King. I'll say the fans a little. First of all, Georgia Tech fans, love you watching this. Really appreciate you guys. You guys have been really supportive. You got to cut out this whole in King we trust and all hail the King. It's bad vibes. And as soon as I saw, these last couple of games, he's been not so great. The interceptions. Let me see if I have the stats here. In their loss to Pittsburgh, he threw 2 picks. This week, he threw 1 pick against the Bulldogs, but they held him to 161 yards passing, 39 yards rushing. Both are season lows going all the way back to the Temple game where he didn't play that much. He ran like wild against Colorado, but didn't pass for much. But since that point, which I think was like week 3, they're lows for the rest of the season. So all that being said, Georgia Tech finishes 9-3. They won't be in the ACC championship, but they'll get a decent bowl game. If they could win that, they finish with 10 wins. That's good. But Georgia Tech isn't Wake Forest. Georgia Tech isn't Duke. Georgia Tech's a good program, and 9-win regular season is not historic for them. It's a solid year. And I think Brent Key is good, but I don't think this is a super elite team that could compete in the playoff yet. Brent Key is building. They're doing better. They'll be in a good bowl. But it's a little disappointing to see how high they got and then how far they fell. Maybe they go win a decent bowl game, retain a lot of guys. Obviously, Haynes King is gone after this year, but retain a lot of guys. I know they like their backup for King. Could be good again next year, which will really speak to how they're building a program, not just a one-off team. Pitt got beat pretty badly. Again, I could have them below Georgia Tech, but 2 weeks ago they were beating Georgia Tech. So they end with a disappointing loss there. So they get blown out by Notre Dame. They get the big win against Georgia Tech, but then they fall flat against Miami. They were outrushed 140-30 to Miami. Miami's just a better team in the trenches. So up at the top, I have Miami and Virginia. Miami won't be in this ACC championship game, but I think I'd probably pick Miami with confidence to beat everybody below them. And against Virginia, I might even lean Miami. It's close. Now, Virginia has done everything they've got the resume. They deserve to be number one. But Miami it's just a real disservice to this entire conference that this championship game isn't an awesome Virginia-Miami matchup. It should be. Miami is 6-2, just like Pittsburgh, just like Georgia Tech, just like SMU, and just like Duke. They all have 6-2 records, and somehow through this cockamamie system that the ACC made up, Duke wins a basic random tiebreaker that means nothing. Obviously, you go by head-to-head, and if it's a three-way tie and everyone's played each other, go by head-to-head for sure. But to completely ignore the reality of the other four games, and I know it'll only be 3 soon, but the other 3 games on the conference slate is crazy. The college football playoff rankings should be somewhere in this tiebreaker scenario, and it should be somewhere above whatever ridiculous thing put Duke, who I have at 9, is the 9th best team in this conference. Whatever put them above number 2 Miami, the college football playoff ranking would be above that. Because Miami, Virginia would be a great game, fun to watch. Instead, we're going to watch Virginia hopefully not blow it against Duke and keep the ACC out of the college football playoff. I don't think Miami gets in as an at-large no matter what. They'll be at best 11th. Could be worse if Texas makes a big jump. But they'll be right there around 11. But they're going to get jumped by 2 teams. They're going to get jumped in terms of not ranking, but slotting. They're going to get jumped by either Virginia or James Madison, whoever the fifth highest ranked champion is. And they're also going to get jumped in terms of slotting by Tulane or North Texas, whoever the 4th ranked. And maybe it's 4th and 5th. That could be, that could flip flop depending on if Virginia wins. But you're going to have 2 conference champions take those last 11 and 12 spots. That's going to knock Miami out. So it's either this conference is a 1-bid league because Virginia won it and saved the conference, or it's a 0-bid league because Duke kind of killed it. So that's where we're at as a conference. For Virginia, SMU lost, Wake Forest lost, Georgia Tech lost. Every single voter should be voting for Tony Elliott for Coach of the Year. Kudos to him. They were bad for a while under him, and I know there was a shooting that probably undermined his progress, which obviously that's way more important than football. They were bad last year. He self-acknowledged that. He doesn't have to say we're bad, but he knew they were no good. He knew they needed talent. And he went out to the portal and he got 20 guys. The biggest piece of that puzzle was adding Chandler Morris from North Texas, the quarterback. He wasn't even the solution in this win. It was really the defense as they beat Virginia Tech 27-7. Big win for Virginia. They didn't blow it. They're number 1 alone, win the regular season. It's 7-1, 10-2 overall. So congrats to Virginia. Congrats to the Virginia fans who've watched this. I know a lot of you have been subscribing lately, so thank you for that. This was a bit longer. I'll wrap up here, but stay tuned, subscribe, hype the video, like it, because we're going to have more. We'll talk about bowl games. We'll do at least 1, if not 2 more power rankings. And I'm talking basketball. If you would like to see something similar, maybe a shorter version of this for ACC basketball rankings, leave it in the comments. If I get enough comments, I'll really consider doing that for basketball. Thank you to our sponsor, Ready Vets. If you live in the upstate and have a dog or cat that needs immediate care, Ready Vets is the place to go. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe.